Good evening and welcome to another segment of Chickster's channel. Unless you live in a total vacuum, and I know Chickster's viewers do not, you know all about front page news is all about our illustrious leaders authorizing a military strike of some sort on Assad's Syrian regime. The purported reason for such a strike is because evidence points to yet another Middle Eastern asshole dictator using chemical weapons, mainly the deadly nerve agent sarin, on civilians. Over 1,000 were killed, and many were women and children. And this is a true horror. About a year ago, President Obama proclaimed that Assad's use of such weapons will cross a red line, and we will respond with force. Apparently, Assad doesn't give a shit what Obama says, and he went ahead with a chemical attack, or some high-up command-level folks in his regime did. So now we have our Nobel Peace Prize recipient president earnestly trying to drum up support for a strike on Syria to accompany his endless drone strikes in Afghanistan and Pakistan. I guess a Peace Prize bar is low these days. Anyway, the U.S. has no other nation support in this. Even our closest ally, Great Britain, declined, nor do we have UN sanction to do this. Now, despite the fact that over 60% of the American public are vocally objected to such an action, the Prez does have some support in Congress, some of it coming from strange territory. Leader Bonner strongly supports Obama, as does Senior Senator John McCain. Lindsey Graham is voicing his support and trying to win over his Republican colleagues. There is the usual support from the flatterers like Pelosi and Reid, who would support Obama if he wanted us all to jump off a cliff. And again, there is the usual gaggle of conservative droogies like Palin, Hannity, and Limbaugh, who wouldn't support Obama in anything, even if he discovered a cure for cancer. The newly appointed Secretary of State, John Swiftboat Kerry, is appealing to us citizens with daily press conferences saying things like, "It's not just the president's red line, it's your red line, dear viewers, and my red line." Sorry, sir, but I don't have a red line. We just pay taxes. But the implication this bonehead is making is that you and I, if we disagree with the strike on Syria, we do not have, quote, a conscience. I call pure bullshit on that, because for the most part, we are the ones who have been losing our fathers, brothers, sisters, husbands, and friends in Mideast battles for the last 10 years, not the jerk-offs in Washington. And it just may be because there's a level of mistrust. Mistrust because many of our illustrious leaders are bought and paid for. And if there are profits to be made, even violence isn't out of the question. Mistrust in our so-called intelligence, which has been the center of controversy in every tragic event from WMD in Iraq to Benghazi. The list just grows. Mistrust in the government so technically sophisticated that they could monitor our text messages and our internet activity in the name of national security, but yet they couldn't stop 2 kids with pressure cooker bombs in Boston who use the internet and cell phones all the time. So it isn't a matter of us not feeling pain for those people who were slaughtered over there, because we do. It saddens us deeply that there is just such a senseless loss of life. I recall horrible human genocide in Rwanda some years back. Where was a call to action then? 8,000 people a day were being killed. So it just may be because our faith and confidence in our government has diminished so much over the last decade or so, we mistrust. And this is all your own doing, Mr. and Mrs. Illustrious Leader. It's your fault. What really scares me in this matter, though, is the Congress wants to approve not just a slap in the ass kind of strike, but one that will, quote, severely impair the Assad regime and swing the balance of the fight to the rebels. Who are these rebels? I seek my news and information from many sources, as my viewers know, but yet I have found very little on these people. I got the following information from a website, policymike.com. I include a link to this website in this video description. And the basic intelligence states that they started out with about 50,000 men who were defectors from Assad's regime. They call themselves the Free Syrian Army. They proclaim they are non-sectarian, non-religious. But over the last year, they have been assisted by almost as many troops from the Syrian Islamic Front and the Syrian Liberation Front. Now, both of these groups espouse a hardline Islamic ideology. A growing segment of opposition fighters, maybe 10,000 or so, come from Jabhat al-Nusra, whose core fighters were part of the insurgency in post-war Iraq and who have pledged allegiance to al-Qaeda. These are the people that we want to swing the balance of the fight to? I don't get it. Senator McCain was on Fox News last night, and he stated that he has met with many of the Syrian opposition fighters, and he says that they are all, quote, moderate. Well, I've just read a confirmed report of rebel commander Khalid al-Hamid eating the heart of a dead Assad regime soldier. I don't know, that sure sounds moderate to me, Senator. Maybe the guy used a knife and a fork, and that's what made it moderate. But for the scary part, we have to go back to Afghanistan in the 80s. The Soviet Union was involved in a huge military operation with the objective of driving out the cave-dwelling opposition fighters, much like the ones in Syria today. President Reagan, along with Oliver North and the U.S. military-industrial complex, were rallying Americans to support the Afghanistan freedom fighters. The U.S. did so by supplying them with the arms, covert operations, and strategies that helped this group of rebels against communist oppression. Well, they kicked the ass of the USSR and they drove them out. A few years later, this happy little group became Al-Qaeda, and their freedom fighter leader was, you guessed it, Osama bin Laden. Before 20 years would pass, they would be responsible directly for the deaths of 3,000 American civilians, with thousands more of our soldiers following. Friends, something with this Syria thing stinks. It just doesn't sit well with me. We, the people, just don't know enough to entrust our leaders and follow blindly into another armed conflict, especially the way they've been screwing up lately. There's a rat in the woodpile. I don't like it. As always, I welcome your comments. Perhaps I could learn something from you. Until then, I urge you to think for yourselves, because no one else will. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.